If yesterday wasn't pathetic enough, today the BBC have wheeled out none other than Jeremy Beadle's long-lost brother, David Aaronovitch. So what was their discussion topic today? Was it about who's attending this year's Bilderberg? Or did they talk about local Swiss news reporting on how Bilderberg will be discussing the IMF's replacement for William Strauss-Kahn? No, of course not. They want to talk some more about conspiracy theories, because a meeting of 130 of the world's most powerful people can't possibly be anything more than a supper club. Whatever the fuck a supper club is.
7:24. Good morning. Now, 50 leading politicians and business people are gathering at a ski resort in Switzerland today. It's a tough job.
No, it's usually about 130. And if you're just referring to UK attendees and you're privy to a guest list, being the top-line investigative journalist that you are, maybe you could share those names with the public.
There's only one subject on the agenda. It's a big one. The future of the world. There will be no announcements, no press conferences. The whole party will be closed to reporters. It's the annual meeting of something called the Bilderberg Group. For some people that demands a dun-dun-dun. For others not. It's very, very secretive though.
Yeah, because if you're into conspiracy theories, you may have heard the group being blamed for, among other things, the credit crunch and 9/11, even plotting the destruction of most of the world's population and of being interstellar lizards.
Okay, so they admit that the press are barred, even though the press don't even try to turn up anyway. They admit that it's secretive and that the world is on the agenda. But if you believe that we should know what's going on behind those closed doors, you automatically believe in interstellar lizards. If you have an interest in international affairs, you believe in interstellar lizards. That's the maturity of the BBC. No wonder people no longer pay their TV licence.
As well, it's been called a capitalist cabal. But is it really that sinister? The likes of Bill Clinton, Prince Charles and George Osborne have attended in the past.
I think interstellar lizards was the David Icke theory on the Bilderberg Group. David Aaronovitch is a columnist at the Times, author of Voodoo Histories, The Role of the Conspiracy Theory in Shaping Modern History, and a very interesting book it is too. I have it myself, on my shelf. David, good morning.
Good morning. And incidentally, since you want a two-word description of everything, I too am an interstellar lizard, according to David Icke. You probably are as well.
I would have thought so. I would certainly hope so, because they will think, because you kind of poo-pooed this conspiracy stuff, they'll have you down as a Bilderberg stooge, I suppose.
Almost certainly a paid shill for the group, for this secretive group meeting in Switzerland.
The only person who pays you, mate, is your own ego.
Well, the Bilderberg Group are essentially, as you probably know, there's quite a lot of little groups around, made up not of the world's leaders, but the people who are almost the world's leaders, because the world's leaders don't have time to go to things like the Bilderberg Group. There are people who do kind of transatlantic meetings. There's something about the successor generation, for instance, which has regular meetings in America and Britain, and it's a sort of kind of supper club, an occasional supper club meets up every year, not the same people, and they have big discussions which they think are terribly important and which some of them like, and then they go away again. They meet up again the next year. But
just a supper club where they unwind, play a bit of golf, or as stated in the 1955 leaked summary report, create the European Union. And I quote, to arrive in the shortest possible time at the highest degree of integration, beginning with a common European market. Just a supper club, folks, where according to Belgian Viscount and Bilderberg chairman Etienne Davignon, where they helped to create the euro currency in the 1990s. Just a supper club.
Because what they do is in secret, it's a bit like the business of what we call Chatham House rules. Chatham House being the International Institute for International Affairs, the Institute for International Affairs.
You mean the Royal Institute of International Affairs, set up through the Cecil Rhodes Roundtable Groups as the sister organisation of the Council on Foreign Relations. Their goal? Global governance, sometimes called the New World Order.
The kind of idea is that people come together and they will only speak openly if nobody is going to report them, and then they can have kind of open discussions and really talk about the problems of the world and so on.
They will only speak in secret in case somebody reports them? What, are they criminals? I thought this was just a supper club.
But that very secrecy, of course, engenders an incredible interest among some people about what they're actually getting up to.
And if people believe that 9/11 was a massive conspiracy, and there'll be texts saying, oh, how can you poo-poo it? There always are. It has traction with some people for whatever psychological purpose or need that they have. They will be looking for those who ultimately have controlled it, and the finger's often pointed at the Bilderberg group.
Well, to be honest, after several years looking into these things, I've never really seen anyone make a direct link between 9/11 and Bilderberg. But of course people are going to be looking for the perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks. It's interesting that he uses the word control, a bit like controlled demolition, which, speculation aside, would explain the partial free-fall collapse of Building 7, for example. But we're supposed to be talking about Bilderberg here. Now, forgive me for theorising, but I think the BBC might be trying to turn people off looking into Bilderberg by claiming only 9/11 truthers and lizard believers are interested in Bilderberg. And that's not a shot at 9/11 truthers, I am one of them. But if you're somebody on the fence, wondering about this secret geopolitical and geo-business meeting, you may be more inclined not to check it out if you hear these quote-unquote authorities on the subject talking about 9/11 truth nutters.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a particular kind of version of what used to be a very much a right-wing theory, an extreme right-wing theory. The John Birch Society in America, a group of very right-wing people, have always had this idea that the world is being taken over by a group of sort of metropolitan, cosmopolitan, elite liberal capitalists.
These supercalifragilisticexpialidocious capitalists. Ooh, look at me, I can use big words.
Sometimes in league with the Jews, in order to kind of try and take the world away from its authentic self, you know, the kind of national church family type of world, and to turn it over to these international cosmopolitan elites. But now, more recently, the left, certain of the left conspiracists have joined in, and they kind of come together now in agreeing that this is how the world is.
Yeah, it's called globalization. That's taking us from national democracies into global governance. It was only the other day that WikiLeaks confirmed plans for a North American Union, not too unlike the European Union, which, although makes 80% of our laws, was not voted on by any of us. So forgive me for not wanting a supercalifragilistic globalised society.
It's interesting because the Nazis had the theory about the Jews that they were responsible for world communism and also world capitalism. They were kind of to blame for everything. And there's the fact that, is there a strain of anti-Semitism about this? For some people who see the conspiracy theories in the name Bilderberg could be Jewish, for example.
You know, for some of them there is, yes. I mean, as you know, it's actually a town in Holland rather than a guy called Bilderberg. You know,
Isaac Bilderberg, you know.
That old Isaac Bilderberg who built a whole town in Holland so that they could name a hotel after him.
Isaac Bilderberg. But considering you brought up the Nazis, how about you talk about Bilderberg's founder, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, a former member of the Nazi Party who worked for Nazi company IG Farben when they were in cahoots with the Rockefellers. That's right, Rockefeller Standard Oil fueled the German Luftwaffe. And of course, not to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but David Rockefeller is a prominent member of the Bilderbergers. Isaac Bilderberg.
Cunning, these people. There can be amongst some of the more right-wing groups this notion of anti-Semitism, and I think that's also slightly grown on the left. And it's the association with banks, and because bankers go as well, etc. But it's kind of rather difficult. There's any conspiracy that has Ken Clark at the top of it, you think it's not likely really to be very threatening.
Or very well organised. You say anti-Semitism, just finally, it's a thought there, you threw that in. It's interesting what you say. You feel that anti-Semitism has grown on the left. Why so?
Well, I think it's been associated a bit with extreme forms of anti-Zionism. I think because of the conflict in the Middle East, I think a lot of people who have been very, very shocked by the plight of the Palestinians have rather let their kind of, if you like, ideological guards down. They've not seen other people who are coming in with different agendas, really, and they've bought into a kind of notion that there is an Israeli stroke Jewish stroke Zionist lobby of immense power which controls things, and I think that's why.
The formal component of the Israel lobby consists of organised lobby groups, political action committees, think tanks and media watchdog groups. Wikipedia 2011.
And another thought, you say people think Ken Clark's at the top of this.
No, people don't think Ken Clark is at the top of this, but what people know, because the official Bilderberg website say so, is that Ken Clark is a member of the steering committee along with 23 other people, who are heads of big business and finance. From a British stance, they also include John Kerr, deputy chairman of Royal Dutch Shell and member of the House of Lords, and Martin Taylor, chairman of Syngenta International.
I mean, he's a human being. He's an astute politician, but he sometimes makes mistakes. And just like the American government, who, with 9/11, to be able to organise that, and if it was a plot, it's extraordinary because people see, in the chaos and mayhem of modern government, they see the clinical and the cynical and the deliberate, and it's never like that, is it?
No, it's never like that, but you can see why people wanted it to be, and it's a bit like a kind of malign version of that group in Indiana Jones and the Lost Crusade. You remember the people who guard the Grail? It's the idea that there are secret groups, for good or for ill, who effectively kind of shape the end of the world, that it's not all the kind of great, big, complicated, messy chaos that we often think it is, but it's somehow very, very well and tightly organised by groups who know what they're doing.
Thank you very much indeed, David.
Welcome.
7:30.
And here's Laura Tobin with the weather.
I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big, wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls.
Boycott the BBC, stop paying the licence and your own brainwashing. I haven't paid it in over a year and there's nothing they can do to enforce it. So fuck you, BBC, because the people see through your lies.